Now we're ready to start draping our basic shift dress. So the first thing we're going to need to do, have a fold line here. What you're going to do is you're going to measure about 1 inch out. So I'm going to eyeball this, and you can use your actual seam gauge, or you can eyeball it, and you're going to actually extend that drape out about 1 inch, and you'll see why soon. And then I'm going to do exactly what I did before. So I'm going to go all the way to the back. Pin at the neck. Make sure that we have some puckering there so that our scissors are going to be able to fit down to cut. Okay, that's better. Now that we've gotten that, we're going to go in and take our scissors and just cut down. Cut away. Like that. So now we have one piece. We're going to put that off to the side. So now we have one piece right here. So what this next requires us to do is, this is going to be marked out, making sure that we get several lines. So we're going to make sure that we address the bust line and the hip line before we remove it off of the dress form and make our additional markings. So I get my pencil and I lightly just get my hip line and my bust line. You can also make a notation that this is going to be the center front, so you can put a CF like right there on that line, just so you know it's going to be the center front. And with those lines, now we're going to take them off. We're going to take this off of the dress form and do some additional marking. So this is what my piece looks like, laid out nice and flat on my table. So first I'm going to go in and just reinforce that hip line. So I'm going to take my color pencil and go across and reinforce that hip line. Then I'm going to move up and then reinforce that bust area. I'm going to go 1 inch away from the raw edge where I'm going to have my center front. So these are going to be the markings that are going to assist me when I'm ready to go and place this back on my dress form. I'm then going to just fold right at the edge of that center front so that I know when I place it back on my dress form, this folded edge, this folded 1 inch center front is going to be aligned with the center front of the dress form. I'm going to do my marking, so I'm going to put my bust line, and my hip line. So remember those markings that we had when we were doing our patterns. It's the same thing in draping. You want to make sure you have those lines. Then I'm going to also go to the side, because this is going to be where my side seam is, and I'm going to measure out about 5/8. And this is just a line. Whether or not it's lining up with the seam allowance doesn't really matter. It's just a sort of notation for you to know this is your side seam. So I'm going to start from the bust line, and I'm just going to go down a little bit past the hip, and that's just going to be my line letting me know this is my side seam. And I'm going to mark it SS for side seam. Also, I just need, and I'm also going to mark CF for center front. I'm going to do my grain line marking, so I'm going to take that line and just make an arbitrary line straight down parallel to the center front and my arrows, just so I know, like we did when we were doing the textiles, that this is my lengthwise grain. Okay, so now I have my markings for my front. And you do the same exact thing for the back. So for the back area, you lay it down, you pin it at the top of the neck, you draw that back shoulder line that we created with the style tape, you draw the corresponding hip line, the side seam, and the center back, as well as the lengthwise grain mark. Then now we're gonna go, once these pieces are done and we have both our front and our back, we're gonna return to the dress form and begin to sculpt our shift dress. Okay. So now that everything is marked, I just went over everything in red so that it was easier to be seen on camera. If you would like, when you're doing your initial draping to get those two panels, you wanna pre-mark that center front and the center back 1 inch before you place it on there. You might want to do that. That's something that I used to do in school as well. We used to just take this square, first predetermine our lengthwise grain, make that arrow, measure out that 1 inch, and then place it on our dress form prior to even trying to get the bust line and the hip line. So that's something you definitely can do just until you're used to just eyeballing that 1 inch measurement. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold on that center front, and I'm going to align my bust line and my hip line. And then I'm just going to put those pins there. Okay, and then for the excess down there, I'll just take some pins, and like we said, that diagonal facing out pinning that you can do to ensure it's easier to remove your pins when you're done, and also that it doesn't really interfere with any of the actual work that you're doing. So what we're first going to do is focus more on this area and narrow everything down. So I'm going to pin this area down, going towards the back. And then I'm going to take my marking pencil or regular pencil and my scissors. So along that neckline, so we're at the neckline, and I'm just going to try to flatten that out a little bit, going to the top point where the shoulder line is, and I'm just going to make my marks around that neckline. And anytime we're usually creating a curve in a garment, there's usually slashing involved to sort of release that taut and tightness that you see here. So first I'm gonna go to the top and cut some of that off. And then I'm going to just slash in this direction to alleviate. And as you can see, as I'm doing that, it's flattening itself out. And that's almost always what we do when we are coming around a curve in a garment. That's dressmaking 101 right there. You always want to do that slash to make sure that you're flattening out that neckline. And and then you just sort of reinforce around it. You're going to make a little point there. Once we've created our neckline point, then we just make a slight mark here and draw, while feeling the groove of the shoulder area, we just draw a line straight down. So now we have a marking for this area. If it helps, I'm going to use a darker pencil so you guys can see that mark. Then I do an X there, and maybe even an X there, and those just let me know these are points. Staying in the arm area, I get it flattened out. I'm going to put a pin there. Now in this area, two kinds of darts can be made. We can do a shoulder dart or we can do a bust dart. So for our shift dress, we're just going to do a bust dart. And that is going to require me to go to this bust area and create that bust dart. So I'm just going to reinforce my hip area, that way nothing gets moved around as I'm trying to create that bust dart. So again, I'm just going to go here using the style tape as a guide. I'm just going to pin in my bust dart. Some pin in there. Just going to mark it there. There's also some tightness at my side seam, so I'm just going to actually do a nice little slash there to sort of relieve that a little bit so it lays down a little bit flatter. And as you can see, there's going to be some excess hair that we're going to use to create our princess seam dart. I'm just going to put there. So you can already start to see it come together a little bit. I'm going to go down here and get that. I'm going to also go in and create my markings for my armhole. So I gently take my pencil from that point that I created and feel down the groove of that armhole. So at this point, it looks like I was off with the fabric. So you should always have excess fabric here. Mine was cut off, so that would have to be adjusted when I'm doing my final pattern piece. I would have to measure what did not hit that side seam and add it to the final one, because once you get there, the same cross that you made here, you would make right at that point, and that's just to indicate to you that these are all important points. So under the armhole, the top of the shoulder, waist. So now we need to do something about this excess fabric here, and that's, again, remember we said darts were what we did to sort of give ourselves form. So without this dart, the dress is just very flat, but see how once we add the dart, we get the dress now has a silhouette. She has some curves to her. She has a silhouette just by adding that pin there. And you can already start to see the shift dress come together. And again, we mentioned the importance of pressing. There's a little crease in there, which if I don't pay attention to that, that might throw off the whole design. So you always want to make sure that you press all your pieces. So then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to cut a little bit away from the armhole, leaving some excess there. And again, this is a curve, so I'm just going to give a little bit of a slash here. just to kind of let that part breathe. So now we need to go in and repeat the process for the back of our dress. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Videos are uploaded weekly covering dressmaking, fashion, lectures, and more. Enroll in Lady Cloth U on Teachable for dressmaking and fashion design courses. See you again soon.